There are few experiences more painful than realizing that the resistance in your life is not coming from just one person, but from many. Being misunderstood by a single individual is difficult enough, but when an entire group begins turning against you, the emotional weight can feel overwhelming. The tension spreads quietly at first. Conversations become colder. Attitudes begin to shift. People who once spoke to you with warmth suddenly seem distant or cautious. In some cases, whispers begin circulating behind your back stories you never had the chance to respond to. For many chosen ones, this moment arrives like a storm they never saw coming. You find yourself standing in the center of something you never started trying to understand, how so many people could suddenly unite against you. Yet there is a pattern hidden inside these experiences that many do not recognize at first. Throughout history, individuals who carry strong integrity, awareness, or influence have often attracted opposition not from one critic, but from entire circles of people who feel threatened by their presence. When someone begins seeing clearly, speaking honestly, or standing firmly in their values, it can quietly disrupt systems built on comfort control or unspoken agreements. In those moments, resistance can begin forming within a community, not because the chosen one did something wrong, but because their presence exposes things others would rather keep hidden. Truth has a way of making people uncomfortable when it shines light on dynamics that were meant to remain unseen. At the beginning, these attacks can feel confusing and deeply unfair. You may have spent countless moments replaying events in your mind, wondering how everything escalated so quickly. You might have asked yourself whether you unknowingly caused the conflict. When multiple voices repeat the same criticism or accusation, doubt can begin creeping into your thoughts. It becomes easy to feel surrounded, as if the weight of many opinions is pressing down on one person who is simply trying to stand in truth. But with time, a deeper perspective begins to emerge. Sometimes the size of the opposition is not a reflection of your weakness. Sometimes it is the clearest evidence of your significance. When one individual threatens the comfort of many, the reaction often becomes collective. Groups form not because the chosen one is powerless, but because their presence carries influence that others cannot easily control. What looks like a coordinated effort to destroy someone often reveals something else entirely. Fear of the impact that person carries. And here is where the story begins to change. What initially appears as a powerful attack does not always end in victory for those who planned it. Over time, contradictions begin appearing. The narrative created behind closed doors begins to collapse under the weight of reality. Actions expose motives. Words spoken in secrecy begin to surface in public. Slowly but unmistakably, the truth begins revealing itself to everyone who once believed the accusations. This is the moment when everything becomes clear. When many people unite against one person and still fail to destroy them, it reveals something extraordinary. It shows that the chosen one was never standing alone in the first place. There was a protection surrounding them, a strength guiding them through the storm, and a purpose that could not be erased by the intentions of others. What was meant to be their downfall becomes the very event that exposes the truth and proves that their calling is far greater than the opposition that tried to stop it. The beginning of the quiet. Opposition rarely announces itself with dramatic confrontation. Instead, it begins almost invisibly, like a subtle shift in the atmosphere that only the most attentive person in the room can feel. At first, nothing seems clearly wrong. Conversations continue, routines remain the same, and the community environment still appears normal on the surface. Yet beneath that surface, something small but noticeable begins to change. The chosen one often senses it before anyone else can explain it. It is not a loud warning or an obvious accusation, but a quiet discomfort in the air, a subtle awareness that something within the environment is slowly moving in a different direction. These early signs are easy for others to dismiss because they are so subtle. But the chosen one begins noticing small inconsistencies that were not there before. A friendly conversation suddenly feels guarded. A familiar smile seems slightly forced. A group that once welcomed open discussion now grows quiet when certain topics arise. It is not one single event that signals the shift, but a series of small moments that gradually begin forming a pattern. People who once interacted naturally now seem cautious around you. Words are chosen more carefully. Silence appears in places where openness once existed. As time passes, these subtle changes become more noticeable. The chosen one begins hearing fragments of gossip that seem disconnected from reality. A comment repeated from someone else sounds slightly distorted, as though a simple situation has been reshaped into something more complicated. You may hear your own actions or intentions described in ways that do not match what actually happened. At first, these rumors appear scattered and harmless, like small misunderstandings that will eventually correct themselves. But something deeper begins forming beneath the surface. These fragments start traveling through the community, quietly passed from one conversation to another, slowly creating a version of events that no longer resembles the truth. What makes this stage especially confusing is that the misunderstandings rarely arrive with clear explanations. A person who once greeted you warmly may suddenly seem distant, but when you ask if something is wrong, they insist everything is fine. Another individual may avoid conversation altogether, even though you cannot recall any conflict between you. These small shifts in behavior create a strange sense of uncertainty. The chosen one begins wondering whether they unknowingly caused offense, or whether something larger is happening behind the scenes. In many cases, the chosen one's awareness begins recognizing the pattern before the full situation becomes visible. The tension is not random. It is spreading through conversations that are happening out of sight. The rumors are not isolated comments, but pieces of a larger narrative slowly being constructed. When several people begin repeating the same misunderstanding, it suggests that those ideas are traveling through the community intentionally. What once looked like small miscommunication now begins revealing itself as the early stage of something more organized. During this period, the chosen one often faces an internal struggle. On one hand, you may try to dismiss the tension, hoping that the situation will resolve itself naturally. On the other hand, your awareness continues noticing the same signals repeating in different places. The atmosphere around you feels different, even when no one openly explains why. This stage can be emotionally disorienting because the opposition remains hidden. Without direct confrontation, the chosen one is left navigating subtle shifts in trust and communication. Yet, this quiet opposition marks the beginning of a larger story unfolding within the community. The small misunderstandings that appear without explanation are not accidental. They are the early building blocks of a narrative forming behind closed doors. Each piece of gossip, each altered version of a conversation, and each cautious interaction contributes to a growing perception that is slowly spreading among people who may not even realize how they are participating in it. For the chosen one, recognizing these early signs becomes an important moment of awareness. While others may still believe everything is normal, your perception begins understanding that the environment is changing. Something is being built quietly, one conversation at a time. And although the full picture has not yet revealed itself, the subtle signs are already pointing toward a coordinated effort beginning to take shape behind the scenes. Why people called you crazy begins to make sense when you step back and observe how most people interpret the world around them. The majority of individuals build their understanding of reality through what they can immediately see, hear, and confirm through familiar patterns. Their sense of stability depends on the belief that things are mostly straightforward and predictable. When a situation appears calm on the surface, they assume there is nothing deeper happening beneath it. This way of thinking creates a comfortable framework where problems are simple and explanations are easy to accept. Because of this, most people rely almost entirely on visible evidence to form their opinions about what is true and what is not. For someone who carries deeper awareness, however, the experience of reality often feels very different. The chosen one begins noticing signals that cannot always be explained through obvious facts. A shift in someone's tone might reveal tension hidden behind polite words. A series of small actions might quietly point toward motives that have not yet been openly expressed. Patterns begin appearing that connect situations together in ways that others do not immediately recognize. These impressions rarely arrive as loud conclusions. Instead, they emerge as subtle feelings or quiet insights that something within the environment does not fully align with the story being presented. While others see only the surface, the chosen one senses layers unfolding beneath it. Yet when you attempt to share these insights with people who rely solely on visible evidence, the reaction is often confusion or disbelief. When someone speaks about deeper motives, hidden dynamics, or spiritual perception, it can disrupt the sense of comfort that many people depend on to feel secure. Acknowledging that unseen forces may be shaping events means admitting that the world is more complicated than it appears. For some individuals, this realization can be unsettling. It challenges their assumption that everything happening around them is already fully understood. Instead of examining the possibility that your insight may contain truth, they may instinctively reject the idea because it threatens the simplicity of their worldview. In these moments, the easiest response becomes labeling the chosen one as irrational. Calling someone crazy is often less about the person being accused and more about protecting the beliefs of the people making the accusation. By dismissing your perception as imagination or exaggeration, others are able to preserve the comfort of their existing explanations. If your insight were taken seriously, it would require them to reconsider the way they interpret situations and people around them. That kind of reflection requires effort and humility, and not everyone is ready to engage in that process. Because of this, the label of being crazy often becomes a defense mechanism used by groups who feel challenged by deeper awareness. When several people share the same assumptions about reality, they naturally reinforce each other's perspective. If one person begins questioning those assumptions, the group may respond collectively to maintain its sense of stability. By repeating the same dismissive label, they create the illusion that the chosen one's insight is unreasonable. Over time, the repetition of this narrative can even cause the chosen one to question their own perception. This stage of the journey can be emotionally difficult because it places the chosen one in a position where truth exists without recognition. You may find yourself standing in a situation where your awareness clearly senses something unfolding. Yet everyone around you insists that nothing unusual is happening. The pressure to conform to the group's interpretation can be intense. Doubt may begin appearing within your own thoughts, as you wonder whether your perception might truly be mistaken. Yet the deeper message hidden within this experience reveals something important about how truth often emerges. Throughout history, many insights that later became obvious were once dismissed as irrational when they were first spoken. When someone notices a pattern before it becomes visible to others, their observation naturally sounds unusual at the beginning. The difference between early perception and collective recognition creates a temporary gap where truth exists but has not yet been accepted. This gap is where the chosen one often finds themselves standing. Your awareness operates slightly ahead of the moment when events fully reveal themselves. You are noticing the early signals, the subtle changes, and the quiet patterns before they become impossible to ignore. To those who have not yet seen these signs, your conclusions may appear exaggerated or unrealistic. But as time continues moving forward, situations begin developing in ways that slowly confirm what was once dismissed. When the truth finally becomes visible, the same insight that once sounded irrational begins appearing remarkably accurate. People start noticing the details they once overlooked. The patterns you sensed earlier now become clear to everyone watching the situation unfold. And in that moment, the label that once seemed so certain begins losing its power. Understanding this dynamic helps the chosen one remain grounded during moments when others question their awareness. Being called crazy does not always mean that your perception is flawed. Often it simply means that your awareness is recognizing something before the rest of the environment is ready to see it. Truth rarely announces itself immediately. It unfolds gradually, revealing its shape step by step, until what once seemed impossible becomes undeniable. When you realize this, the criticism of others no longer carries the same weight it once did. Their reaction becomes easier to understand because it reflects the limitations of their perspective rather than the weakness of your insight. The chosen one learns to observe patiently, allowing events to confirm what awareness has already recognized. Instead of rushing to defend every perception, you begin trusting that truth has its own timing. In this way, the accusation of being crazy transforms from an insult into a strange kind of confirmation. It often signals that you are noticing something others have not yet recognized. And as history repeatedly shows, what sounds irrational today may become the very explanation everyone accepts tomorrow. Once reality begins catching up with the insight that arrived early, the strategy to isolate the chosen one often begins long before anyone openly acknowledges that a strategy even exists. Unlike direct confrontation, isolation operates quietly and indirectly, making it difficult to identify at first. The chosen one may initially sense that something is changing in the social environment around them. Yet the source of that shift remains unclear. Conversations begin feeling slightly different. Invitations that once came naturally become less frequent. People who once spoke freely now seem cautious or distant. None of these changes appear dramatic on their own, but together they begin forming a pattern that slowly reshapes the social atmosphere. This process unfolds gradually because the group attempting to weaken the chosen one understands that isolation rarely works when it is obvious. Instead of openly attacking, they allow small adjustments in behavior to accumulate over time. One person may stop engaging in conversation. Another may begin responding with subtle coldness. A third might casually repeat a small criticism that appears harmless on the surface. Each action seems insignificant by itself, yet together they create an environment where the chosen one begins feeling separated from the community they once felt part of. At the heart of this strategy lies the attempt to weaken the chosen one through social distance. Human beings are naturally influenced by the reactions of those around them. When multiple people begin pulling away or questioning someone's reputation, it can create emotional pressure that leads the individual to doubt themselves. The group relies on this psychological dynamic, believing that if they can create enough distance between the chosen one and the rest of the community, the individual will eventually lose confidence or credibility. One of the most effective tools used during this stage is the quiet spread of rumors. Unlike direct accusations, rumors travel through subtle conversations and indirect comments. A statement may begin as a simple observation repeated casually during a private discussion. Later, it is shared again with slightly different wording, adding a small suggestion or interpretation that was not present before. Over time, these fragments begin circulating through the community, slowly building a narrative that appears convincing simply because it is repeated often enough. What makes rumors particularly powerful is that they rarely arrive in the form of clear accusations that can easily be challenged. Instead, they often appear as questions or concerns. Someone might say, "I heard something unusual about them," or "Some people are starting to feel uncomfortable." These vague statements leave room for imagination, allowing listeners to fill in details that were never actually stated. As the story moves from one conversation to another, it gradually grows stronger, not because it is true, but because repetition creates the illusion of credibility. The ultimate goal behind these rumors is to damage the chosen one's reputation before they even realize what is happening. If enough people hear a particular narrative first, it becomes difficult for the chosen one to respond effectively later. By the time they learn about the accusations being circulated, the perception may already have spread widely throughout the community. At that point, any attempt to defend themselves can appear like a reaction rather than a clarification. The group understands this dynamic well, which is why the narrative is built quietly before confrontation ever takes place. As this process continues, the chosen one may begin noticing the effects of isolation more clearly. Conversations grow shorter. People who once offered support now seem hesitant. There may even be moments when individuals avoid direct communication entirely, choosing instead to rely on what they have heard from others. This stage can be particularly painful because it creates a sense of confusion. Without direct dialogue, the chosen one is left trying to understand why relationships are shifting without explanation. Yet the use of isolation as a tactic is far from new. Throughout history, individuals who stand apart from the crowd have often faced similar strategies. When someone challenges established norms, exposes hidden truths, or simply carries a presence that disrupts existing power structures, groups sometimes respond by attempting to push that individual to the margins. Isolation becomes a way to neutralize influence without addressing the deeper issues the person represents. What the group may not realize, however, is that isolation can also produce the opposite effect. When the chosen one is pushed away from the noise of the crowd, they gain space to observe the situation more clearly. Distance allows patterns to become visible. The same silence that was meant to weaken them can become an opportunity to reflect and strengthen their inner clarity. In many cases, the chosen one begins recognizing that the isolation itself reveals more about the intentions of others than any rumor ever could. This realization becomes a turning point in the story. Instead of interpreting the distance as evidence of failure, the chosen one begins understanding the deeper purpose behind it. The strategy designed to weaken them begins revealing the true nature of the conflict. The quiet attempt to isolate them becomes a mirror reflecting the fear and insecurity operating behind the scenes. And while isolation may temporarily reshape the social landscape, it cannot permanently silence truth. The same narrative built through whispers eventually encounters the reality of actions and character. Over time, people begin noticing inconsistencies between the rumors they heard and the reality they observe. When that moment arrives, the strategy that once seemed powerful begins losing its influence. What was meant to isolate the chosen one ultimately reveals the fragility of the narrative created against them. And the very distance that was intended to weaken them becomes the space where their strength quietly grows. The emotional battle behind the scenes is often the most difficult part of the entire experience because the real struggle during this stage does not happen in public conversations or visible conflicts. Instead, it unfolds quietly within the inner world of the chosen one. While rumors spread in the background and attitudes shift within the community, the chosen one is left alone to process what is happening. The confusion, the silence, and the lack of clear explanation create a pressure that can feel far heavier than open confrontation. During this time, the emotional weight of the situation begins building slowly, day by day, as the chosen one tries to understand how everything changed so suddenly. The chosen one faces intense emotional pressure during this period, because the opposition rarely arrives in a clear and direct form. If someone openly accused you of something false, you would at least know what you were dealing with. But in this stage, the conflict operates in shadows. You sense the tension in conversations. You notice people becoming distant. You hear fragments of stories that do not match your reality. Yet no one sits down with you to explain exactly what is happening. This lack of clarity creates a heavy psychological burden. The mind begins searching for answers, replaying past interactions, and trying to identify the moment when everything started going wrong. As time passes, the pressure increases when multiple people begin repeating the same accusations or criticisms. Hearing a single negative comment might be easy to dismiss, but when similar words begin appearing from different directions, it becomes harder to ignore. The repetition creates the illusion of consensus, as if many voices are confirming the same narrative. Even when the accusations are untrue, the constant echo of those claims can slowly wear down confidence. The chosen one may begin asking themselves whether there is some misunderstanding they failed to notice or some mistake they unknowingly made. This is the moment when doubt begins quietly creeping into the mind. At first, the chosen one may try to remain confident in their understanding of events. But as the voices around them grow louder, a new question begins forming. What if they are right? The human mind naturally seeks harmony with the environment around it. When many people repeat the same story, even an inaccurate one, the pressure to conform becomes powerful. Doubt appears not because the accusations are true, but because isolation makes it difficult to hear any other perspective. During this stage, the listener may find themselves reflecting deeply on their past actions. You might replay conversations in your memory, analyzing every word you spoke and every decision you made. You may wonder whether a small misunderstanding somehow grew into something larger than you intended. Perhaps there was a moment when your honesty offended someone, or when your boundaries challenged expectations that others had for you. In your search for answers, it becomes easy to turn inward and question yourself more harshly than anyone else ever could. Yet this inner questioning, painful as it may feel, is also part of the deeper process unfolding within the chosen one. Because this stage is not only about surviving external opposition, it is also about strengthening internal clarity. The emotional battle forces you to examine your values and intentions with greater honesty. When you look back at your actions and realize that your decisions were guided by integrity rather than harm, a quiet confidence begins forming beneath the surface of doubt. It may not appear immediately, but it grows gradually through reflection. This stage becomes a test of inner strength and self-trust. The chosen one must learn to stand in their truth, even when external voices attempt to rewrite the narrative. It requires courage to hold on to your understanding of events when the surrounding environment insists on a different version of reality. The temptation to surrender to the group's opinion can be strong, especially when doing so would bring temporary peace. But deep inside, something continues reminding you that truth cannot be replaced simply because it is unpopular. The emotional pressure of this period also teaches resilience. Every moment you face doubt and continue searching for clarity strengthens your ability to navigate future challenges. The chosen one begins learning that approval from others cannot always be the measure of truth. Sometimes the most important decisions must be made quietly within your own conscience, guided by what you know to be right rather than what others want to believe. As difficult as this stage may feel, it is preparing the chosen one for the next phase of the journey. The emotional struggle refines your awareness and strengthens your independence from the shifting opinions of the crowd. When the storm eventually begins to clear, and the truth starts revealing itself. The confidence you developed during this hidden battle will become one of your greatest sources of strength. What once felt like overwhelming pressure gradually reveals itself as a training ground for resilience. The emotional battle behind the scenes was never meant to destroy you. It was shaping your ability to trust your inner compass, even when external voices tried to lead you in another direction. And through that process, the chosen one begins discovering a deeper strength that no rumor or accusation can easily shake. The hidden motives behind the attack begins to reveal itself only after time has passed and the emotional storm starts settling. In the beginning, everything seemed confusing. The accusations felt sudden and exaggerated, and the opposition from multiple people appeared to come out of nowhere. But as the chosen one steps back and begins observing the situation more carefully, a deeper pattern slowly becomes visible. What once looked like random criticism begins forming a clearer picture. Conversations that once seemed disconnected now reveal subtle connections. The reactions of certain individuals begin making more sense when viewed through a wider lens. And gradually, the deeper motivations behind the attack begin to surface. As time passes, the chosen one starts noticing that the people involved in the conflict often share certain hidden interests. Perhaps they were individuals who held influence within the community or benefited from a particular social structure that had gone unchallenged for years. Maybe they relied on reputation authority or carefully managed narratives to maintain their position. When the chosen one entered that environment carrying honesty awareness or a refusal to conform to unspoken expectations, it quietly disrupted the balance that others had grown comfortable with. At first, the disruption may have been subtle, but for those who depended on maintaining control, even small disruptions could feel threatening. Through this realization, another truth begins to emerge. The attack was never truly about the accusations being made. The stories spread about the chosen one may have focused on personality behavior or supposed mistakes, but those explanations rarely capture the real cause of the conflict. The accusations functioned more like tools than genuine concerns. They provided a convenient justification for actions that had already been decided. By focusing attention on the chosen one's character, the group could redirect attention away from the deeper issues that were actually motivating their behavior. When you begin looking beneath the surface, the real motivations often become much clearer. In some cases, the conflict was driven by the desire to protect power. If someone's position in a community depends on maintaining control over how things operate, the presence of a person who sees through those dynamics can feel like a threat. The chosen one's awareness might have exposed inconsistencies that others preferred to keep hidden. Even if those truths were never spoken directly, the mere possibility that they could be revealed creates tension among those who benefit from the existing structure. In other situations, the hidden motivation may be connected to reputation. Communities often rely on shared perceptions about who holds authority, who deserves trust, and who influences decisions. When someone appears who challenges those perceptions, either through their honesty or their refusal to follow expected roles, it can destabilize long-standing narratives. Rather than allowing the narrative to change naturally, some individuals may attempt to protect it by discrediting the person who disrupts it. Envy also plays a powerful role in many conflicts like this. When someone carries natural confidence, clarity, or influence, it can unintentionally highlight the insecurities of others. The chosen one may not have been seeking attention or authority, yet their presence alone may have drawn respect from people around them. For individuals who measure their own value through status or recognition, this can feel deeply uncomfortable. Instead of addressing those feelings internally, they may attempt to eliminate the perceived competition by turning others against the chosen one. Fear of exposure may be the most powerful motivation of all. In environments where certain behaviors, decisions, or alliances rely on secrecy, the presence of someone with strong discernment becomes unsettling. The chosen one may not have openly accused anyone of wrongdoing, yet their awareness can make others feel as though their actions are being observed more closely than they would prefer. This quiet pressure can lead people to act defensively, forming alliances with others who share the same fear. As the chosen one begins recognizing these motivations, something important shifts within their understanding of the situation. What once felt like a personal attack begins to reveal itself as a reaction to something larger than any individual disagreement. The conflict was never truly about personality differences or minor misunderstandings. It was about the disruption created when truth enters an environment that has long relied on silence or carefully managed appearances. The chosen one's presence threatened systems that depended on those conditions remaining unchanged. When someone carries honesty, clarity, and a willingness to see through illusions, it challenges the stability of structures built on deception or denial. Even if the chosen one never intended to confront those systems directly, their very existence within that environment became a form of pressure that others could not ignore. Understanding this truth changes how the chosen one interprets everything that happened. The accusations that once seemed deeply personal begin to lose their emotional power. Instead of seeing them as reflections of your worth or character, you begin recognizing them as symptoms of a deeper struggle taking place within the community itself. The attack was not designed simply to criticize you. It was designed to protect something that others were afraid of losing. And when this realization settles in a powerful sense of clarity, begins to replace the confusion that once surrounded the situation. The chosen one understands that their role was never to fit comfortably into systems built on silence or deception. Their presence was meant to bring awareness, even if that awareness caused discomfort among those who preferred the old ways to remain hidden. What once looked like rejection now reveals itself as evidence that truth had quietly begun challenging structures that could not survive in its presence. Why God allowed the attack to happen becomes clearer only after the noise of the conflict begins to fade, and the chosen one has enough distance to look at the situation with deeper understanding. During the height of the attack, it often feels impossible to see anything positive in the experience. The accusations feel unfair, the isolation feels painful, and the confusion about why it is happening can weigh heavily on the mind. In those moments, the chosen one may even ask questions that seem to echo quietly within the heart. Why did this happen? Why was I placed in this situation? Why did so many people unite against me yet? As time passes and the emotional storm begins to calm, a different perspective slowly begins to emerge. The conflict that once appeared senseless begins revealing that it served a larger purpose than anyone could see at the beginning. The message hidden within this experience is that opposition often acts as a powerful form of exposure. When everything in a community is comfortable and peaceful, people rarely reveal their deeper motivations or loyalties. In calm environments, it is easy for individuals to maintain appearances and avoid difficult truths. But when tension enters the environment, when accusations begin circulating and people must choose how they will respond, something important happens. The conflict forces everyone involved to reveal their true character. Those who genuinely care about fairness, integrity, and truth begin questioning the narrative they hear. They observe the situation carefully and refuse to participate in spreading rumors or hostility. Others, however, respond very differently. Instead of seeking clarity, they align themselves with the accusations sometimes, without even examining whether those accusations are true. In this way, opposition becomes a mirror reflecting the nature of every person involved in the situation. The chosen one may not have realized it at the time, but the conflict created a moment where hidden intentions could no longer remain concealed. People who once appeared supportive began showing whether their loyalty was genuine or conditional. Some individuals stood quietly beside you, refusing to join the crowd, even when doing so might have been easier. Their support may have been subtle, perhaps expressed through a kind word, a message of encouragement, or simply their refusal to repeat the rumors circulating around you. These individuals revealed themselves as people who valued truth more than popularity. At the same time, the attack also exposed hidden agendas that had previously remained invisible. Certain individuals who seemed neutral or friendly may have quickly aligned themselves with the accusations once the narrative began spreading. Others may have contributed to the rumors repeating stories they had never personally verified. In the calm environment that existed before the conflict, these motivations might have remained hidden indefinitely. But the pressure of the situation forced those intentions into the open, where they could no longer be disguised. Through this process, the attack became something far more significant than a personal conflict. It became a moment of separation and clarity within the community. People who once appeared similar began revealing the differences in their values and priorities. Those who valued honesty gravitated toward truth, while those motivated by fear, envy, or self-interest moved toward the narrative that benefited them most. What once felt like a chaotic situation gradually revealed itself as a sorting process that distinguished between genuine loyalty and superficial connection. For the chosen one, this realization can be both painful and empowering at the same time. Painful because it reveals how some relationships were not as authentic as they once seemed. But empowering because it brings clarity about who truly stands beside you and who was only present while circumstances were comfortable. Without the conflict, these distinctions might never have become visible. The attack also strengthened the chosen one's awareness of their own resilience. During the early stages, the pressure may have felt overwhelming, but surviving the experience reveals a deeper strength that might not have been fully recognized before. You discover that your ability to endure criticism, misunderstanding, and social pressure is far greater than you once believed. The conflict becomes a test that reveals not only the character of others, but also the depth of your own perseverance. In this way, what once appeared to be an attempt to destroy the chosen one gradually transforms into a process of refinement. The situation removes illusions about relationships, exposes hidden motives, and strengthens the chosen one's ability to stand firm in truth. It also brings an important realization. Sometimes the challenges allowed in your life are not meant to harm you, but to reveal the environment around you more clearly. What looked like a devastating attack becomes a moment where clarity replaces confusion. The people who truly belong in your life become visible, while those who were connected only through convenience or shared narratives begin fading away. The conflict creates space for new connections built on genuine respect and honesty. And perhaps most importantly, the chosen one begins recognizing that they were never as alone in the struggle as it once seemed. The exposure of truth, the quiet support of those who remained loyal, and the resilience that grew within you, all reveal that the situation was guiding you toward a clearer path. What once felt like a storm meant to destroy you ultimately becomes the moment that reveals the truth about everyone involved and prepares you for the next chapter of your journey. The moment the plan begins to collapse rarely happens all at once. It unfolds slowly, almost quietly, like the first cracks forming in a wall that once looked strong and unshakable. For a time, the narrative created by the group may have seemed powerful. Rumors traveled quickly, opinions formed rapidly, and the chosen one appeared surrounded by voices repeating the same accusations. From the outside, it might have looked as though the strategy was working exactly as intended. But stories built on manipulation and assumption have a fragile structure. They may stand for a moment, but they struggle to survive when reality begins testing their foundations. Eventually, the narrative that was carefully constructed behind the scenes begins showing signs of weakness. The first indication often appears in the form of small contradictions. One person's explanation does not perfectly match another's version of the same story. Details begin shifting depending on who is speaking and who is listening. The accusations that once sounded certain start losing their clarity as people notice that the information being repeated lacks consistency. At first, these contradictions may seem minor, almost easy to overlook. Yet as more people begin noticing them, the cracks in the narrative grow wider. This is where time becomes one of the chosen one's greatest allies. False narratives often rely on speed and repetition to maintain their power. The faster a rumor spreads, the less opportunity people have to examine whether it makes sense. But as time passes, conversations slow down. People begin reflecting on what they have heard. Questions start forming in the minds of individuals who previously accepted the story without hesitation. When those questions are asked openly, the people responsible for spreading the accusations may struggle to provide clear answers. At the same time, the behavior of the attackers begins revealing more than their words ever did. In the early stages of the conflict, they may have appeared confident and unified, presenting a strong front to support the narrative they created. But maintaining that appearance requires constant coordination. Over time, small differences in personality and motivation begin creating tension within the group itself. Some individuals may become uncomfortable with how far the accusations have gone. Others may grow careless, speaking too openly about motives that were meant to remain hidden. These subtle shifts in behavior begin exposing the reality behind the accusations. Evidence also begins appearing in ways that cannot easily be ignored. Sometimes it comes through documents, messages, or events that contradict the story being circulated. Other times it appears through the simple observation of character. People who interact directly with the chosen one begin noticing that the accusations do not match the behavior they witness. They see kindness where they were told there was manipulation. They see honesty where they were warned about deception. The gap between the narrative and reality becomes harder to dismiss with each passing day. This is the turning point where the situation begins reversing itself. The same attention that was once directed toward criticizing the chosen one slowly begins shifting toward the people who created the accusations. Individuals who once repeated the rumors start asking who originally started them. They begin wondering why certain stories changed over time or why different people remember events differently. In this moment, the spotlight that was once aimed at the chosen one begins moving toward the architects of the narrative. What was meant to destroy the chosen one begins exposing the attackers instead. Their actions, once hidden behind whispers and assumptions, now appear in the open, where they can be examined by the same community they tried to influence. The strategies that once seemed clever begin looking careless. The accusations that once sounded convincing now appear exaggerated or unsupported. As people observe the contradictions and inconsistencies, the credibility of the attackers begins weakening. For the chosen one, this moment can feel both validating and humbling. After enduring the emotional pressure and isolation of earlier stages, seeing the truth emerge can bring a deep sense of relief. Yet it also reminds you of something important. The collapse of the narrative did not require constant defense or retaliation. Truth has a way of revealing itself when given enough time and space. The patience you showed during the earlier stages becomes one of the reasons the plan begins collapsing. By refusing to engage in endless arguments or respond with hostility, you allowed the situation to unfold naturally. Your consistency created a contrast between your behavior and the accusations being made against you. When people began comparing those two realities, the difference became impossible to ignore. This stage of the journey reveals a powerful lesson about integrity. When someone attempts to destroy a person whose character is grounded in truth, the attack often turns back on those who initiated it. False narratives require constant maintenance, while genuine character simply continues existing as it always has. Over time, the weight of reality exposes the difference between the two. And as the plan begins collapsing, something even more significant begins taking shape. The chosen one no longer appears as a victim of accusations. Instead, they become a living example of resilience and patience. The very experience that was meant to erase their reputation becomes the moment that reveals their strength to everyone. Watching the story unfold, public failure of the scheme is the moment when everything that was once hidden behind whispers begins stepping into the light where everyone can see it. For a long time, the conflict may have felt like it existed in shadows. Rumors traveled quietly through conversations, opinions formed behind closed doors, and the chosen one carried the weight of accusations that seemed impossible to fully address because the narrative had already spread through the community. In the early stages, it may have appeared as though the people orchestrating the attack controlled the story completely. They believed that if enough voices repeated the same version of events, the perception of truth would eventually replace reality. But narratives built on manipulation cannot remain stable forever. Eventually, a moment arrives when the truth becomes visible to the wider community. And when that moment comes, everything begins changing at once. This turning point rarely begins with a dramatic announcement. Instead, it starts with small realizations spreading quietly through the same network that once carried the rumors. Someone notices that a detail in the story does not match what they personally witnessed. Another individual hears two versions of the same accusation that contradict each other. A third person begins reflecting on how the chosen one has continued behaving with consistency despite the pressure surrounding them. These realizations may begin separately, but together they start forming a new wave of curiosity. The people who once accepted the rumors without question begin asking themselves whether they truly understood what happened. As this curiosity spreads, conversations within the community begin shifting in tone. Instead of repeating the accusations confidently, people start asking careful questions. They begin wondering who originally started the story and why the narrative appeared so suddenly. Individuals who once felt certain about the accusations now notice that many of the details remain unclear or unsupported. Some may even realize that they participated in spreading information they never personally verified. This realization can be uncomfortable because it requires people to confront the possibility that they were influenced by a narrative that was never fully accurate. At the same time, the behavior of the chosen one becomes an important part of this shift in perception. While the rumors circulated, you continued living with the same values that defined you before the conflict began. Your actions remained steady. You did not become the person the accusations described. Those who interact with you directly begin recognizing this contrast more clearly with each passing day. They see kindness where they were told to expect hostility. They witness honesty where they were warned about deception. The difference between the story and the reality becomes impossible to ignore it. This growing awareness within the community creates a powerful chain reaction. Once a few people begin questioning the narrative openly, others feel more comfortable expressing their own doubts. Conversations that once revolved around repeating accusations now revolve around examining whether those accusations were ever justified. Individuals who once stayed silent because they feared social pressure begin speaking honestly about what they observed. Slowly but unmistakably, the environment that once supported the rumors begins transforming into an environment where truth is being actively sought. In this moment, the group that attempted to control the narrative begins losing credibility. Their authority depended on the assumption that people would continue accepting their version of events without deeper investigation. But once questions begin appearing, that authority starts weakening. When asked to provide clear explanations, they may struggle to maintain consistency. Some may attempt to defend the story by repeating the same accusations, but repetition alone cannot replace evidence. Others may try to distance themselves from the conflict, entirely acting as though they were never deeply involved in the narrative they once helped spread. As more people recognize these inconsistencies, the influence of the group continues diminishing. The same individuals who once spoke with certainty now appear uncertain themselves. Their confidence fades as they realize that the community is no longer accepting their explanations without scrutiny. The narrative that once seemed powerful now appears fragile, held together only by assumptions that are rapidly losing their strength. Meanwhile, the chosen one's integrity begins shining more clearly than ever before. Surviving the storm of accusations without abandoning your values becomes its own form of testimony. People notice that despite everything you endured, you did not respond with bitterness or revenge. Instead, you maintained dignity, patience, and restraint. This quiet strength becomes impossible to ignore because it stands in direct contrast to the chaos that surrounded the accusations. Over time, the chosen one's integrity becomes undeniable to those who observe the situation honestly. The same community that once questioned your character now sees evidence of your resilience and consistency. Individuals who once believed the rumors begin recognizing how easily narratives can be manipulated when people fail to examine them carefully. This realization often creates a powerful sense of reflection within the community itself. Some people may approach you with apologies, acknowledging that they misunderstood the situation earlier. Others may not speak openly about their change in perspective, but their behavior begins shifting in noticeable ways. They treat you with greater respect. They listen more carefully when you speak. The environment that once felt hostile gradually becomes calmer as the weight of the false narrative lifts. The public failure of the scheme becomes more than just the collapse of a rumor. It becomes a moment of learning for everyone involved. The community begins understanding how easily assumptions can spread when people follow the crowd without asking questions. They see how quickly reputations can be threatened when narratives are accepted without evidence, and they witness how integrity can endure even under intense pressure. For the chosen one, this stage carries a profound realization. The attack that once seemed capable of destroying your reputation ultimately revealed your character more clearly than any words ever could. The pressure forced you to demonstrate patience, resilience, and trust in truth, even when the environment around you appeared hostile. And because you remained steady during that storm, the collapse of the narrative becomes even more powerful. Then the truth emerging publicly does not simply clear your name. It also exposes the deeper lesson behind the entire experience. Attempts to manipulate perception may succeed for a moment, but they cannot permanently replace reality. When enough time passes, actions reveal intentions, character reveals truth, and narratives built on deception eventually collapse under their own weight. In the end, the public's failure of the scheme becomes a turning point, not only for the chosen one, but for the community itself. What was meant to humiliate or silence you becomes the very moment that proves your strength. The story that once seemed controlled by others now reveals something far greater. Integrity cannot be erased by rumors, and truth cannot remain hidden forever when people are willing to look beyond the surface. And in that moment, everyone watching the story unfold begins understanding something important. The chosen one did not survive because the attack was weak. The chosen one survived because their character was stronger than the narrative created against them. The power of remaining calm during the storm becomes clear when you look back at the most intense moments of the conflict and realize something remarkable. Your greatest victory was never about defeating anyone. It was about mastering yourself. When the accusations first began spreading, the pressure to react immediately may have felt overwhelming. Every rumor carried the temptation to respond. Every criticism invited a defense. Every misunderstanding created an urge to correct the record right away. Yet the deeper strength of the chosen one revealed itself through a different path. Instead of fighting every accusation aggressively, you learned to remain calm while the storm raged around you. And that calm became the very force that eventually exposed the weakness of those who tried to destroy you. In the early stages of the conflict, many people expected you to react emotionally. They assumed that the accusations would provoke anger, defensiveness, or retaliation. In fact, some of the individuals involved may have depended on that reaction. When someone is trying to damage another person's reputation, emotional responses often become useful tools. If the chosen one had responded with rage or hostility, those reactions could have been used as confirmation of the narrative they were trying to build. Every outburst could have been presented as proof that the accusations were justified. The attackers may have hoped for exactly that outcome. But the path you chose disrupted that expectation. Rather than allowing the situation to dictate your behavior, you practiced restraint. This does not mean the experience was easy. Remaining calm during a time of public pressure requires enormous emotional discipline. There were likely moments when you felt misunderstood, frustrated, or deeply hurt by the accusations circulating around you. Yet even during those moments, you resisted the impulse to turn the conflict into a battlefield of constant arguments. Instead of engaging every rumor directly, you focused on something far more powerful: consistency. While others spent their energy constructing narratives and repeating accusations, you continued living according to your values. Your actions remained steady. Your character did not change to match the hostility surrounding you. And over time, this consistency began speaking louder than any defense you could have delivered. Through words alone, patience became one of your strongest allies. In a world where many people react quickly and emotionally, patience often appears unusual. Some individuals may have even interpreted your calmness as weakness at first. They may have believed that your silence meant you had nothing to say, or that you were unable to defend yourself. But patience has a quiet strength that becomes visible only as time passes. While emotional reactions burn quickly and fade just as fast, patience endures long enough for the truth to surface. Alongside patience, dignity played an equally important role in your response. Even while facing accusations, you refused to lower yourself to the same tactics being used against you. You did not begin spreading rumors in return. You did not attempt to destroy reputations out of retaliation. Instead, you protected your own character by refusing to participate in the cycle of hostility. This decision may have required tremendous restraint, especially during moments when defending yourself aggressively might have felt justified. Yet by maintaining dignity, you preserved something far more valuable than momentary victory. You preserved your integrity. Self-control also became a crucial part of your strength. Conflict often invites impulsive reactions. When people feel attacked, their instincts push them toward immediate defense. Yet the chosen one understands that not every battle must be fought in the moment it appears. Self-control allows you to pause before responding, to choose your words carefully, and sometimes to choose silence when silence is the wisest response. In the middle of a storm, self-control becomes the anchor that prevents you from being pulled into chaos. Over time, this calm response created a powerful contrast within the community observing the situation. While the attackers continued spreading accusations and escalating the narrative, your composure remained steady. The difference between those two approaches became increasingly noticeable. On one side stood individuals attempting to control perception through emotional intensity and repetition. On the other side stood a person who remained grounded, patient, and consistent despite the pressure. This contrast began influencing how people interpreted the situation. Even those who initially believed the accusations started noticing something unusual. If the chosen one truly matched the negative image being described, why did their behavior appear so composed? Why did they not respond with hostility or manipulation? Why did their actions continue reflecting patience rather than defensiveness? These questions slowly shifted the perspective of those watching the conflict unfold. In many ways, your calmness allowed the truth to reveal itself more clearly. When people argue aggressively, the noise of the argument often distracts from the underlying facts. But when one person remains calm while others escalate emotionally, observers naturally begin paying closer attention to the behavior of each side. They start evaluating not just the accusations being made, but the character demonstrated by those involved. This is why restraint ultimately became your greatest victory. By refusing to turn the conflict into a chaotic exchange of accusations, you allowed the situation to unfold in a way that exposed the intentions of the attackers. Their strategies relied on creating confusion and emotional reactions. When those reactions never fully appeared, the narrative they constructed lost much of its power. Your calm response also amplified the failure of the attackers in a way they likely never anticipated. Because you remained steady throughout the storm, the collapse of their narrative became more dramatic when it finally happened. The community could clearly see the difference between the accusations and the reality of your behavior. Your patience highlighted their contradictions. Your dignity revealed their hostility. Your self-control exposed their desperation to maintain a story that could no longer support itself. There is a deeper lesson hidden within this experience. True strength is often misunderstood. Many people associate strength with loud victories, aggressive defenses, or visible confrontations. Yet the strength demonstrated by the chosen one operates differently. It is the strength to remain grounded when others attempt to provoke chaos. It is the strength to protect your character even when your reputation is under attack. And it is the strength to trust that truth does not require constant shouting to survive. Looking back at the storm you endured, it becomes clear that your calmness was never passive. It was an active decision made repeatedly in difficult moments. Every time you chose patience instead of anger, dignity instead of retaliation, and self-control instead of impulsive reaction, you were strengthening the foundation that would eventually support the truth. And in the end, that calm response did more than protect you. It revealed something powerful to everyone watching the story unfold. The chosen one did not overcome the attack by becoming louder or more aggressive than the opposition. The chosen one overcame the attack by remaining unshaken while the storm exhausted itself. Through patience, integrity, and inner discipline, you allowed truth to rise naturally above the noise. That is the quiet power of restraint. It does not simply survive the storm. It outlasts it. And when the clouds finally clear, the strength that remained calm becomes impossible for anyone to deny. Rising stronger. After the attack becomes the natural conclusion of everything that came before, because surviving a storm of opposition does not simply return the chosen one to where they started. Instead, it reshapes them. It sharpens their understanding of people, strengthens their inner stability, and clarifies the purpose behind the challenges they endured. What once felt like a devastating attack eventually reveals itself as a moment of transformation, where the chosen one emerges not weakened, but stronger, wiser, and more grounded than before. As the dust from the conflict settles, one truth becomes unmistakably clear: the chosen one has survived a public test of character. And tests of character carry a unique power. Anyone can appear trustworthy when circumstances are comfortable and calm. But integrity that survives public pressure carries a different weight. When accusations were spreading, when opinions were divided, and when the environment felt uncertain, the chosen one continued acting with patience and consistency. That consistency did not simply protect their reputation, it refined it. In many ways, reputation becomes more solid after being tested publicly. People within the community witnessed the entire process unfold. They saw the rumors appear, the accusations grow louder, and the pressure increase. They also saw how the chosen one responded. Instead of collapsing under criticism or reacting with bitterness, they maintained their composure and stayed aligned with their values. Because the community observed this process firsthand, the respect that develops afterward carries far more depth than simple admiration. It becomes trust, built through observation. At the same time, the experience teaches an important lesson to everyone who witnessed the conflict. The community begins realizing that attempts to destroy integrity often produce the opposite result. When people try to manipulate narratives or attack someone unfairly, they expose their own intentions over time. The situation becomes a mirror reflecting the character of everyone involved. Those who acted with honesty become more respected,